This is sport by the fans with the fans. This is the Armchair Selector.
G'day, Jeremy Irvine in Melbourne with you. Thanks for joining us. The baggy green is something we all aspire to as youngsters wanting to play for Australia, and only a select few get to be given one. Well, today we've got an interview with the bloke who actually makes the baggy green, the CEO of Albion Sports, Brendan Denning. Brendan, welcome to the Armchair Selector. Let's go back in time and talk about where Albion started, because it's really the home of the baggy green, isn't it?
Home now hasn't always been the home of the baggy green. I think way back when, in the overseas tours, players were awarded a baggy blue to start with. So maybe Rodney Hogg was onto something when he kept talking about the baggy blues and the baggy greens. But we have been the custodian, as we like to say, of the baggy greens now for a number of decades. And we even still have a seamstress, we have a seamstress in Sydney,
right,
who has been making and repairing, sometimes on the quiet, those baggy greens for over 30 years.
Wow. So this is a lady we see on TV when the baggy green goes to hospital.
Yes, if you can recall a couple of summers ago when there was a lot of conjecture about whether Ricky Ponting should have his baggy green repaired or not.
Right.
Myung got the makeup ready and we trotted out the TV cameras and showed the baggy green being repaired, which tends to happen almost every 12 months or so. There's obviously a lot of interest from overseas.
Yep.
Recent Ashes series, or most recent Ashes series, say here, Sky Sports UK and those other networks will often come and do interviews with us about the baggy green, ESPN in India and so forth.
So it's a worldwide. You get, I guess, a lot of interest from not only Australian cricket fans, but people who look at the brand and go, this is what you do.
I'm still absolutely blown away most days of the week in that I don't understand, and I'd love to understand, I don't understand how so many people know that Albion make the baggy green. There's no branding visible on the baggy green, but there aren't too many people I've come across, whether it be cricket, non-cricket community, who don't know that we actually make the baggy green, which is pretty phenomenal. Our marketing staff, I'm sure, would absolutely love to know, because whatever that secret formula is, we need to do something more with it.
It's the herbs and spices that go into it. So we're at the headquarters here in Melbourne, but you've actually got a number of offices, haven't you? And operations.
Yeah, HQ is here, of which there are only 10 or 11 staff. Right. And then we have a production office in Sydney, which is where the previous ownership had run the company from. So all of our custom caps and hats is actually made in the Sydney office.
Okay. Yeah. Now you were kind enough before, and I'll put a picture on the site with the podcast to actually show me a real baggy green. For those who have never actually been, and I made the comment, this is close to a baggy green as I'm ever going to get. What's it made of, and how is it made?
100% Australian wool,
right.
And all of the baggy greens are, it sounds like a cliche, but they're all cut from the same cloth, in that we have a roll of wool that right. That is obviously the particular green dye colour that we make all of the baggy greens from. So what tends to happen is we might make a couple at a time. So that particularly when the Australian team is touring, if someone is making their debut with a day or two's notice, as much as we'd like to think we could probably provide the solution, sometimes a little more difficult than that. Right. So that's what it consists of.
Yep.
And there's been plenty of challenges over time in terms of wool prices and the like. But I've said to my staff before, I want to be able to look in my grandfather's eyes over Christmas lunch, who's a sheep farmer from way back,
right, and
say that we make the baggy green still out of 100% Australian wool.
Fantastic.
And whilst we don't make many baggy greens,
right.
Our current business model relies on the cricket caps, the baggy caps, and the traditional cap styles, which is more popular in the UK.
Yep.
Generates about 50% of our current revenue, so it's a big part of our business.
So a lot. And I've had a look at the website obviously before I came here today. As a cricket club, you can essentially, or anyone, you can essentially put anything on a cap that looks like a baggy green that isn't. baggy green.
Looks
exactly.
like it. Yeah, there's two.
You can have your baggy blue, your baggy whatever,
or your baggy pink, as we've
Baggy
just
pink,
seen at the SCG.
That's right. So you guys do the McGrath caps as well.
Yes, we've been donating those to the McGrath Foundation for a few years now.
Right.
I'd absolutely love to see the players walk out on that occasion with a baggy pink. I've asked the question, but current ICC rules don't permit it.
Right.
So the closest we get is the players will walk down the race and hand them over to Glenn.
Right.
And they auction them off afterwards and raise money for the McGrath Foundation.
Right. Of which you're a supporter too.
Yes.
What do you think makes it so special? I mean, it's how did it become part of the Australian cricket vernacular? Do you think? I mean, you've been involved in sport for many years. Did you grow up just going, "This is amazing," and then, I mean, do you pinch yourself every day coming in and going, "Okay, hang on, this is pretty cool"?
Yeah, I do, and I'm often introduced now, even just within friends and family. The quickest way for people to understand what we do is, here's Brendan Denning, his company makes the baggy green. And as I said before, everybody knows what that baggy green is.
Yep.
As to why it's so mystical and so much legend surrounds it, I mean, which version of the story do you tell? I mean, I love the fact now currently that current players are given a baggy green, whereas again back in the 40s, 50s, it was a cap per tour, and that's why we see a few of them floating around on at auction from time to time.
Yep.
But I think it's added to the if you like the value and the culture when Steve Waugh and Mark Taylor in following on in terms of that's your baggy green cap.
Yep.
And we see that's why so much conjecture as to whether Ricky Ponting should repair it or not, or that kind of thing.
Now we've seen some of the players actually show the baggy greens. They don't just get the cap though, do they? There's a bag that comes with it. Yeah,
we do make a cap bag, personalised cap bag with their name and their player number embroidered on as well. We've actually just recently started making them available to cricket players, cricket clubs around the world as well, because I guess we like to look at it as protecting your investment.
Yep.
A lot of the state teams in Australia now do that as a matter of course. So there's cap bag is because as cricketers, you'll throw your gear in the bag and everything else, and particularly with the baggy green, but we're seeing it more and more is that your players do want to look after it because you can actually get a fair few years wear out of it.
Talking about the product range, and you guys have a range of cricketing and other products. How do you get feedback from players? Do they go, with your helmets and your caps? Is that kind of something that you're always interested in getting feedback from your customers? Going, okay, well, could be this, could be that. The visor could be a bit different, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we focus a lot of time on trying to get that feedback from elite players, but now even more so just within the wider cricket community.
Yep.
So when I first started a few years ago, the focus very much at that time was updating the range, because whilst Albion had been seen as an innovator, it's fair to say I think we'd sat on our hands for a long while, and other competitors are coming to the market, or our product has started to become dated. So certainly one of the first things we did was introduce a carbon fibre helmet, which therefore was so much lighter than anything else, and of course so much stronger. And most recently, in the last 12 months, we've tinkered with face guard design, again based purely on feedback from players. And that's presented some challenges too, because the more we understand about head shape and size and facial features, and we get quite technical now in terms of the product development. Yeah. You're always trying to find the method that suits the majority of the population, and the question then is how much can you personalise it for the cricketers and things like that. But they're the kinds of scenarios that we throw around, and trying to see how we can improve that whole customer experience when they pick up a helmet in a store. They get the fit right, perfect first time. There's a few things that we've done and we're continuing to do to try and improve that as well.
Not only do you do cricket gear, and I guess as a primarily cricket fan, I hear the name Albion and go baggy green, but there's a lot more to the company, isn't there? And it's not just Australia.
Certainly not Australia. We have distributors of cricket product in UK, South Africa, New Zealand, subcontinent, US, and we supply to a lot of other smaller countries via those distributors or ourselves. So there's cricket goods being sold, and we're basically producing cricket helmets now full time, 12 months of the year, and that wasn't the case even probably 2 years ago.
Okay.
So our production capacity has had to increase remarkably, which is a great problem to have, but also presents some challenges at times. But in terms of other products, we've just recently relaunched an equestrian brand, Kuhnel and Denley, of which your cricket connoisseurs would recognise the C&D. So we used to be an equestrian brand way back when, even before becoming a cricket brand. So that's happening as we speak, and that's there's a lot of global demand for what we've done there for jockeys to start with, and then a full equestrian range not long after. We've produced rugby headgear for a long time, and we do a lot of honour caps for rugby clubs and things. We are looking to reinvigorate our involvement in rugby. We've had some recent meetings with the IRB and some of the rugby nations about some things that we think we can do to better protect rugby players with their headgear. So that's on the cards for 2013-14. And then we've got a whole bunch of other, I guess, opportunities that we're exploring that are still the core being head protection for sport. So call that your action sports, your skate and surf and snow. There's been interest in a couple of other parts like roller derby, which is obviously where girls on roller skates and undies try and beat the daylights out of each other. Fastest growing female participation sport in the world. So what we've done through the cricket reputation, and I think absolutely enhanced through what we've done with the jockey helmets, has created an environment where we've got sports from around the world contacting us and saying, we've got a problem with our sport in terms of concussions and so forth. What can you do to help us? Which is a fantastic position, and that's exactly where we want to be. Right.
So it's a global market, and you're producing goods to suit niche audiences in those global markets.
Yeah, it's a full-time business, but it's not, Jeremy. In that, from a cricket perspective, it's I don't believe it's sustainable as a 12-month model still yet. Okay. If we peeled everything away and said, right, we're doing our cricket helmets, our caps and hats, and our bags, that's a very challenged model because of the mature marketplace, very crowded marketplace. And it's a big part of why the company went in the direction it did prior to the change of ownership, was that it really wasn't a sustainable business as a cricket business alone. Okay. Yeah.
Can we change tack and talk about social media? It's how we connected on Twitter. You guys use Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, and I enjoyed seeing your staff blooper reel of the product reviews, and I think we're sitting in the product review room here. How did A, the company, and B, you get into social media, and how do you use it?
I'd struggle to think how we started. Still like to think of myself as pretty young and hip and knowing what's going on around the place. Look, it was probably all part of trying to not rebrand, but rebirth the company, and we're trying to take a very traditional business and a traditional product range and combine it with new technologies and technological advances and so forth. So, look, probably the Twitter and Facebook thing probably started about the same time, and we started to see that was a great way to start to not only get our messages out, but of course get some feedback and get some messages back from the customers and consumers. And I think where we are now with both an Albion Cricket Facebook and Twitter account, and our C&D, and I put on my company owner hat and try and keep a tab on all things. I just think it's a great tool. Yep. But I also often remind our marketing staff that it's not the be all and end all. Certainly not yet. It needs to be one of the channels, if you like, that we utilise. But we'd certainly like to try and ramp up that the ability to do the research and get that consumer feedback via those platforms, because it's probably our most effective method, because we're not able to go out and pay large sums of money to other people to conduct focus groups and things like that.
And you can't bet every ground at every game every weekend watching how the cricket's going,
and
much as you might like to.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a great way for us to also keep an eye on what's happening out there. Right. I follow thousands of other people and companies because I'm interested in learning and finding out what others are doing, because often all it takes is an idea from somebody else for us to think of a way that might be applied in what we're doing, or in yours and my case, and in other cases, actually creating a new contact and a new potential network and resource as well. So I encourage all the staff. A few of the other staff have got their own Twitter accounts, which obviously mention their involvement with Albion Sports, and I know that they receive a lot of questions and feedback from individuals, which is great too. And so far, we haven't had any examples of people overstepping the corporate culture. I think everyone's pretty savvy and knows how we should be going about it.
So, for people listening, what's your Twitter account?
My Twitter account is at Albion Sports.
Right.
There is an at Albion_cricket.
Right. And
there is an at CD Helmets, which is the Coonan demo.
And we'll have all those links on the website. Let's have a chat about you. You're a West Australian by birth and education. You started in Perth.
You're querying where I was born? Or?
No, I'm making the point that we're not all one. I'm just double checking what I read on LinkedIn. Actually,
moved to Victoria probably 11 years ago.
Right.
Met a Victorian in WA and playing sport through. That's how we met. And I'd always, having worked in sport, even back then in WA, having done human movement straight out of school and working in sport, it was probably always the long-term goal to head east, because we all know that Melbourne is the capital of sport, for the world, that is, not just Australia.
Do you want to say that again to our English listeners?
Yes, I'm sure they already know that's where it all happens. Not sometimes with the results that we always want, but so that probably fast tracked the thought to move east.
Yep.
And I love WA, love going back. All my family are still there, but I consider myself. Well, I shouldn't say I consider myself Victorian. I really enjoy living in Melbourne.
Right. And we worked. So you worked at the Sydney Olympics. That would have been a fascinating time to be over in Sydney and doing results.
An amazing experience, a really long, funny story about how it came about, because I was just wanting to go as a spectator.
You're right.
And trying to go and watch every game of hockey that there was. And the long story short, I ended up actually being offered a job to go and do exactly that, watch every game of hockey and be paid 3 times more than I was being paid in my current role. So again, that's just funny how life pans out through existing networks, and therefore to go and move to Sydney for a few months, and just most amazing experience, as I said. Best seat in the house. Had a great team of 60 odd staff and volunteers, and literally was there sun up, sundown. Besides the hockey involvement as a results manager, I was there for things like men's and women's 100 metre finals. I was there on Kathy Freeman night. So all those, and they were just through ticket ballots too, mind you. So it was a fantastic period. Lots of opportunities came out of that in terms of perhaps staying in Sydney and working in sport.
Yep.
But look, I think Melbourne is a city that has far more. I guess links with coming from Western Australia and Perth. Maybe it's the AFL connection and so forth. But I decided to go back to Perth and then ended up in Melbourne.
Okay, where we spent 7 years at Hockey Australia.
Yeah, that was look, obviously there for 7 years means I was having a great time, enjoyed it. I preached that to my staff. Life's too short to do something you don't enjoy. But was able to work on a raft of things within hockey, which is probably my number one passion in terms of as a participant in sport. And my coaching background and everything is primarily in hockey and tennis. And look, ultimately, the move from Hockey Australia to Albion was born out of that traditional scenario where sporting organisation boards come and go. And whilst the succession plan was there to become the CEO, as I said, the board changed overnight. Out went the CEO who'd been there for a long time, and you could very quickly tell I wasn't in the thinking for for the next opportunity, and it kind of it made me look at different options. And having always worked in sporting organisations, I guess that's where I initially looked. But I look back now, and my mates who I've studied with and worked with, they often say, "Look, BD, do you look back 3 years ago and go, amazing how this path that you've taken." So again, just a circumstance that has led me down a certain path. Yeah.
Thank you for your time today. We always conclude these type of interviews with an over of half trackers. So we're just going to fire some very quick questions about primarily cricket questions, because I'm still looking at that Baggy Green game. It's very cool. So the first question is, favourite cricketer, past or present, Brendan?
Oh, look, I think favourite cricketer, Dennis Lillee. I can still think back to watching cricket as a youngster, being from WA. I'm sure I always pretended to be DK in the backyard.
Very cool.
Trouble was I was bowling at my sisters, and they sort of didn't really want to play cricket for too long after that, surprisingly. And I think, and look, I don't think he's done anything to tarnish that reputation, as he's maintained his involvement in the game too, which I think is probably an important thing in terms of sort of how you revere someone as to their involvement in sport and what they've done afterwards as well.
Yeah. Who will captain the Australian Test team after Michael Clarke?
After Michael Clarke. Look, long shot, Tim Payne.
Wow, very good. One piece of advice you give your three sons when you're playing cricket with them?
I tell my eldest son that he needs to share batting and bowling experiences, and also, of course, most importantly, winning isn't everything, because he's a very competitive beast like his father and mother. But look, certainly getting out there and having fun, whether it be cricket or whatever it is, and I know it sounds cliche, but I mean, we're lucky to have a huge backyard at home, and I love spending as much time as we can out there playing cricket, basketball, tennis, trampoline, whatever it is.
Right.
It's great to see them active, and I think it's probably something that we're unfortunately neglecting with the next generation of kids too.
In a word, Twitter, as a CEO...
Valuable.
Right. Who should open the batting for Australia? This is a bit contentious on the armchairselector.com at the moment, so you're close to the Baggy Green. Who should have it as openers?
And we're talking openers at what period? Say the next tour of India, for example?
The next tour. Who will be opening in 12 months? So the next summer, 2012-13, 13-14? 13-14 is finished. Who will be opening? Boxing Day Test this year. There you go.
Yeah.
It's always an easy one.
But Watson and Cowan.
Okay. Watson and Cowan, he says. Excellent. And last question, where Australia's playing England in the Ashes from July. So our winter, 5 tests. How are we going to go? What's the scoreline?
Scoreline. I don't believe that Australia will be bringing home the Ashes from England, and therefore I think it's going to be very interesting as to how things pan out for the series being mirrored back here in Australia, because I have some concerns about what that might do for the whole interest in the Ashes itself.
Yeah, well, 10 in a row is going to be fascinating. Brendan, thank you very much for your time. It's almost like meeting the keeper of the Baggy Green here. And congratulations on your successes, and good luck for the company this year.
Thanks very much, Jeremy.
Cheers. And that's it for this episode of the Armchair Selector. Thanks so much for Brendan for taking the time out. It was day 2 back in the office for him after the Christmas holidays. Great guy, really interesting thoughts, and just fascinating to actually not only see but actually be able to touch a Baggy Green. It's certainly the closest I'm ever going to get to it. Thanks too to Scotty MacArthur and Kai Hanley. Scotty's done the sound engineering for us with the new intro and outro, so thanks very much to Scotty for that. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to catching you soon on the Armchair Selector. Everything is at www.thearmchairselector.com. Have a great sporting week, and as always, go the Melbourne Renegades. Cheers.